So welcome to this week's episode of the Drivetime Podcast. We are your global auto tech podcast designed to help you navigate the fast-moving world of automotive innovation. I'm your host, Jackie Barker. Whether you're in the showroom or the service bay or the boardroom, this is your space to understand the tech that's shaping our industry and how you can use it to transform your business. This week in the studio, I'm joined by Mohammad Lone, who is the global agency partner and a consultant at Google. He's also the Automotive Specialist. So we thought we'd start with the best and the biggest. Mohammad, welcome to this week's episode.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
So the reason we launched this podcast as a way of educating the industry, because we are super specialists in automotive, but technology is transforming everything that we do and it touches everything that we do. And I wanted to really early in the episodes just talk to Google because in my experience, you have the biggest, well, first of all, you were like the first you've launched the internet, daddy of the internet, but also you have probably the largest case study of all human behaviour across every single vertical because everybody starts with a search with you guys. So I just thought it'd be really helpful to kind of start with you and then start to weave in the background of Google. Just a little bit about you, Mohammad. When did you join Google and just talk about your journey into tech?
My journey's been a fascinating one. It's been a confluence of two passions of mine, really, I think, in terms of interest in tech, how, the internet works, and then interest in automotive. And that's kind of led me to where I am now. So joined Google 5.5 years ago, just before COVID. And when I started out, I was working in the ad sales team. So we had quite a large customer book, 60 to 100 customers at once. And through that time, one of the privileges we have at Google is that we work with all kinds of businesses, right? From, retailers, B2B companies, and one of those categories is auto, right? So over those 5 years, I've been able to partner more with automotive businesses, with dealers, with manufacturers and whatnot, to where I am right now, which is working on helping expand vehicle ads and our auto solutions out to the UK.
Ad sales is one of those areas where, weirdly, I started my career in advertising sales, but in classified advertising.
Right, I see, yes.
And it's one of those things where it's the small ads that have the biggest audience.
Absolutely.
And people seek it.
Absolutely.
So I think it's one of those areas where marketplaces have completely exploded because you get a much better search experience rather than having to thumb your way through print and look for something
it's
in
so
an
fascinating.
index.
I was seeing yesterday someone from Romans, the dealer group, posted on LinkedIn a photo of one of their newspaper ads for Romans International, very prestigious dealer. And they had in a newspaper, I think Sunday Times, they're advertising Ferrari Enzos just on a list, like, the old style 1, 2, 3, of the features. It's just on one line. It's just fascinating how much has changed in 20 years or so.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Yeah. So before you went to Google, kind of what was your journey into tech? Was it a tech background, or was this, you mentioned you took tech and automotive, but where did it all start?
Absolutely. So it started quite a way back, actually, when I was growing up. One of my dream jobs, and I still say, the answer to if you weren't at Google, what would you be doing now, was automotive journalism. So I had a couple of summers where I did work experience and whatnot in Auto Express magazine, and that really got me thinking about not just the cars themselves but the business side of it, right?
Yeah.
And then in terms of the Google side of things, my experience primarily was kind of in the world of consulting, very hard figures, a lot of Excel spreadsheets. So working at Google's kind of been a great way to bring those two sides together. And really work with that diverse range of auto clients in the UK.
It's mad. So Google, I remember, so I went from print to digital, and that transition was with Auto Trader, and there was so many talented young people that were just like digital brainchilds, and we were I was coming in with an automotive background, but I hadn't really got the tech background, and I learned a huge amount. And we based a lot of the work that we did at Auto Trader on the Google moments.
Right, yes.
And I think one of the things that we forget in automotive is that it's a human business, but tech is engineered around human behaviour. And the Google moments was a real foundational knowledge piece for me that I think it's really useful to refresh on. And we did talk about this, the 4 Google moments. I got them wrong. I thought it was I want to try, I want to buy. So it's I want to know, I want to go, I want to do, I want to buy. And what that means is everyone starts their search with a question. So I'd love to just explore how have the Google moments changed, or do you still base all of your engineering on those key moments because they're rooted in like human behaviour?
it's a fascinating question. The nomenclature or the names might have changed, but actually a lot of it still remains the same, right? Within that discovery journey, the differences now are really the diversity of sources of information that consumers have, but also what consumers are expecting of technology, right? We think about, when voice assistants were very early, the Hey Google or the other ones. We would, and sometimes still now, we give very specific instructions, right? And we talk in a different way. There's almost a different language we use for them, right? Because we don't assume that they can understand, kind of the direct conversational language like we do now.
Yeah.
Similar with search, right? Back in the day, there was very specific searches that we would look at maybe, or actually we'd search very generally, trying to get like the whole broad depth of information. What we're seeing now, people, now that we've got, car buyers, for example, who've grown up with Google, they don't know a world without it. They're demonstrating that they really demand more from search. And what I mean by that is 15% of queries on Google every day are brand new. They've never been searched before. And it's fascinating because we've been saying that stat for about the last decade, but it holds true. That, no matter how much search variety is growing, it's still growing, as much as it has been. So what that means is that people are searching more a variety of things. People are searching specifically more long tail queries that perhaps we didn't see before. So where someone might have searched, more commonly best SUV before, now people are actually searching, best SUV for a family of 6, for example, or
Right.
best SUV for a family of 6 with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, that kind of thing, right? And the key opportunity for all brands in the auto business is how can you meet that demand, right? How can you actually make sure that you're appearing there, and you cater for those specific queries as well as the general ones.
I think the search thing is still, I mean, we used to hear there were people that were search experts talking about the dark art of SEO and how like you would get there was like Google Geddon where you wouldn't have anything. It's like there's Google Geddon, they're stopping your ads. You go, what? So I think if you understand how search behaviour is evolving and how we ask our little listening device, hey, so and so, play, and they always get it wrong, and my kids are literally shouting at their Alexa device, going, no, you idiot.
That's it. We need to get
really...
your Google. We need to get your Google Assistant.
We don't have that, but we do. But yeah, you're right. But it's like how our homes all connect up. But just coming back then onto the point about search, because I think that's a really interesting one. How if we're talking to an audience of retailers, the majority of the people that use our products are OEMs and retailers, and we provide the systems that allow them to sell cars. And one of the things that we're trying to get better at is how do you reduce the cost or improve lead acquisition. Absolutely. So the acquisition of the lead or the first search that you put into your phone or your laptop will then determine what comes back to you in terms of your search results. So you said that you're getting longer queries. Are retailers able to optimize their ad pages quickly enough, or are there ways that we can start to help them to do that better?
Absolutely. There are a number of ways. We use the words AI, first mention of the day there. One of the great things that's enabled us to do is go from being, very specific and targeted in what we're, targeting to appear on. But now we're able to be more predictive and we're able to anticipate behavior through using tools like Broad Match, for example, in Google Ads, which is a way that you can essentially tell your campaigns that you want to target this category, and Google AI will use various signals, whether that's the user's kind of behavior previously, their location, the time and date, and it will show your ad for the right user at the right time, which is what we always aim to do with Google Ads. So you mentioned, for example, lead acquisition, but also lead efficiency. These are all things that advertisers and businesses in auto can do to get the lead volume, but also make sure that you're appearing for relevant searches, and thus, you should have a cost-efficient way of doing that.
So how do we? Because I suppose there is so much. We also see when we look. We've been doing a number of discoveries, and we've kind of split our tech into quadrants that makes it easier just to navigate. So you might say, okay, well, there's been loads of money invested in new car vehicle sales, and that's one tiny bit of the journey, but obviously you've got to get your stock in front of a consumer when they're looking. But I love the idea of setting the parameters so it makes it easier for consumers to compare maybe a brand new car with an approved use or something within a budget parameter, for one example, and how you start to surface the stock, we probably see only 40%. If we were to take a medium-sized retail group with, I don't know, 50 to 60 sites, they're only going to be listing probably 40% of the stock they have available in their whole inventory.
Okay.
So you're not even optimizing the remainder of that stock, because it's costly to advertise. If you're using a marketplace, you get a stock allowance. You'll kind of have a stock contract on how many units you're going to put online at any one time. So I suppose, is there a way that retailers can start to use that AI, second mention of the day, ability to start to search the stock in real time as consumers are browsing? Is that the kind of what's coming next?
It's such a fascinating topic you mentioned there around, not advertising all your stock, because naturally, a lot of the classifieds have these rates. If we compare it to the world of retail, outside of automotive, for example, what brands like Nike are doing, right? The classic example, Nike trainers. Now, Nike are not going to be, or even a smaller shoe brand, they're not going to be like hiding some of their stock necessarily from advertising because of the cost, right? So it's an interesting pivot, I think, an opportunity for auto brands. On Google, we launched last year in the UK vehicle ads, right, which is a way to get your vehicles to the top of Google search, to show your inventory off, whether it's new or used, to the customers. And within that, what we've seen the most success from is when dealers or manufacturers feel empowered to put all of their inventory onto that. Because once you put all of your inventory onto that, you basically make sure that customers who are looking for any vehicle of yours can find that vehicle. They'll see the ad on the top of the page, and if they click on it, if they show they're interested after seeing the photo, after seeing the mileage, after seeing the vehicle, then that's an interested click, and then only then do you pay, rather than the cost of the listing itself. And beyond that as well, there's so many exciting developments when it comes to what we're doing on the cloud side of things. So, for example, when it comes to conversational chat on website, for example, there's some exciting cloud tools that help automate that, using your own website, using your own feed and recommendation system. An example of that is that, say if someone sees a car on the road, for example, they don't know what the car is, but they can put it into the chat of your website, and they can ask, what's this car, do you have any available? And that's where you can start the conversation from that using AI.
So is that things like the Google Lens? So you can literally scan it and
exactly,
go, have you got one
right?
of these?
Google Lens is the app that we can all get on our phones, and it's brilliant, right? You can use it even for clothes, which is quite incredible as well.
I do. I'm like, what's that outfit?
Love that.
So I've done it when you see somebody wear something on TV. I'm like,
Yes.
Google Lens.
Exactly.
The other thing, you can do like reverse lookup, can't you, of humans?
Exactly. Yes.
Which you need when you've been through the menopause and you forget people's names. It's like, can you tell me? So just going back on a couple of points you mentioned there about how you list things and how you pay for that listing. So you talked about cost per click. So you got cost per click is, so you're only paying for the thing when someone's clicked on it.
Yes.
And then they come through, and that's where it kind of comes into the retailer website, which is very much the domain that we operate in.
Exactly.
So we're tracking, where does that inbound lead come from, and how can you then very quickly bring it from a lead, I've clicked on this thing, I'm now looking at you, and I want to see maybe a couple of things like, do you have availability?
Yes,
How much is it? And I think this is where it starts to get I suppose, inconsistent across different sites. So how quickly can you surface the information, or how quickly do you maybe learn from what am I looking at to be able to surface the right information towards me? And there was, I had a conversation with one of your colleagues in Canada, actually. She was talking about how different demographics search differently. So you should know that men might look for, and we're not stereotyping, this is data that I know we probably have some of this data, but it's how women will search for, or will be persuaded by different, it could be like a budgetary thing. So I want to look at the budget, whereas the guy might look for performance.
Yes,
I mean, I've got three sons, and they don't give a shit about the cost. They're going to look at how fast it goes. So it's like, whereas I'm like, how much is it? So I think we're all kind of driven by a different, so not to stereotype, because you can personalize everything. How easy is it to personalize a customer's experience based on their historic browsing? Are we there yet, or is there still some way to go?
There's always new developments coming into the era of personalization. One of the things that, from a marketing perspective, that Google's always put a lot of investment into is how we can make sure that we're paying the right amount for the right user, right, when it comes to our cost per clicks and our marketing. So a classic example of this is that, when you have a campaign that you've set up, say, for example, for your vehicle ads, one of the key steering factors of that campaign is going to be the smart bidding targets, right? So how much are you willing to pay for each click? We've gone from an era of, us telling the system that I'm only willing to pay 50 pence per click for all of my users. We've gone from that now to where, thanks to machine learning and automated bidding, we're able to say, look, I want you to bid based on different users. So maybe, for example, a user who's been researching a lot more, they're closer to the conversion stage of their journey, or the purchase stage. I'm willing to bid a bit more for them, as opposed to someone who's higher up in the funnel. And ultimately, now you can just set a target return on investment that you want from your campaigns. So we have a lot of tools at our leverage to personalize. And then also now, when it comes into creatives and the world of AI generated creatives as well, Google has some exciting tools like VO2, for example, which is our video generation tool. And I was speaking with some of our partners who have tools that help leverage that, such as a Pencil, which is something that Brand Tech Group have developed, which is a tool that you can essentially input your assets into this tool. You can ask, or you can, through kind of Gemini or ChatGPT style querying, you can ask it to create an ad, and it will do that, in a very short amount of time. And as you might have seen, I don't know if you've seen that Porsche AI ad by any chance.
Remind me. There's
Okay,
a few
so
ads.
there's a fascinating ad that was created using our VO2 tool, not by Google, not by Porsche actually, by someone who's using it, and essentially it's a whole advertisement for Porsche 911. The theory is that it's a head-turning car basically, but if you see that ad, you wouldn't believe that it's AI generated. You wouldn't believe it. It looks so real. Everything looks very natural, and the actual car is featured in it. And the fascinating thing at the moment is that, that was created not by a business. It wasn't created by Porsche. They've actually recognized it and said, wow, it's quite an amazing ad. But it was made using AI. So there's a lot of interesting, the full ad. Yeah, the full ad. And the fascinating thing as well is that after the actual ad, there's a behind the scenes, behind the scenes kind of bit. But that's actually made using AI as well, where they show the people with the cameras and and someone talking about how hard it was to film or whatever. So it's fascinating how much we can do and how much we can do to personalize, and it's just the beginning really from that perspective.
Thinking about the research, what do customers really care about when they're shopping and buying, and do you think the industry kind of understands that well enough yet?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. I think there's a particular stat that's of note here, which is question to customers about what they care most about when they're purchasing or making that decision of which car to buy. 51% of customers said that they prioritize having some kind of unique innovation or some kind of special feature set, and that's actually reflected as well when you look at content on YouTube. We mentioned auto content, right? Top auto creators, if you look at Doug DeMuro from the US, he talks about quirks and features of cars, right? And that's his most kind of popular viewed stuff. CarWow, for example, in the UK, Matt Watson talks about things he likes, things he doesn't like about cars. So people do prioritize that kind of unique quirkiness or innovation of those cars. 44% of people said they prioritize having that emotional connection and having a brand meet their needs, which again, when we talk about content, it's so important. That's a really good way for you to do that. And a side note on that, we had a study of automotive ads compared to ads from other categories when we talk specifically about video and how much they connected emotionally with customers. Auto ranked 2.5 stars out of 5, right? Now, that is higher than perfume, which is interesting, especially given celebrities and perfume.
Yeah.
But actually, that rating of emotional connection was lower than photocopier ads and lower than oral hygiene ads. So it's a fascinating
I'm pulling
stat.
a face.
I know, right?
Oh my God.
It's a fascinating stat, but it really highlights, I think there's a lot of opportunity. Now, obviously, there are differences in the environment. But I remember when I was growing up, I had the ad of, I think, the Peugeot 206, where it was an elephant sitting down on a car and someone in India handcrafting his own car. You think about the Skoda ad of the cake and things like that.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's slightly less of that nowadays from a creative perspective.
Yeah.
And maybe there's reasons for that, but I think there's opportunity for more memorable, emotionally connecting material there.
Do you know, now you mention it, If we were talking about the Volvo ad, about how I drive a Volvo, but it's but I'm on my fourth. I mean, I'm really loyal. I'm on my fourth one.
Fantastic.
So, and I go back to the brand. I do have an emotional connection to it because it saved my life a couple of times.
Wow, okay.
It will automatically stop if something's walking, and it's it's a really amazing vehicle. But I love it anyway because it's just a brand I'm particularly close to.
Yeah.
But the advert, I don't see ads as much anymore. And my boss actually mentioned, have you seen the advert where it shows this woman, this couple, like in love, blah, blah, blah. And then, she's pregnant or whatever. But it then shows you the ad and then the whole life of a human going all the way through to getting married and having kids themselves. Wow. But then at the beginning, like she almost gets hit by a car and the car stops. And that's my car has stopped. And I'm like, wow. I hadn't even seen the ad. So I wonder whether how we consume media is different. We don't see the ads the way that we used to. So unless you go to the cinema, so it's about different experiences. We now go to the cinema. There's a fantastic cinema near us. We just went recently and took all the kids.
What did you see?
It was the Captain America.
Oh, right, I see.
It was really good.
I see. Oh, good to hear. Good to hear.
So really good. I've got boys and teenage girls, my stepchildren. So we have like a load of kids, but it's the girls wanted to go watch Captain America, as you do. They were looking at superheroes. But it was like, and that was where I saw the ad.
Right.
So I'd heard about it, hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
So I think there's these things that we would automatically see because we, as a family, we would sit down and watch something on telly.
Yeah.
Now we stream. You mentioned Netflix.
Exactly.
We stream everything.
Yeah.
Because if you pay for the subscription, you see less advertising.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to use things like Google and whatever, online marketplaces to be able to place your advertising, to be able to get your brand seen. But you do have to work, I think, a bit harder, don't you, to get that?
Yeah, but equally, when it comes to things like YouTube, there's in many ways more opportunity than ever when it comes to those moments. But yeah, the format has changed a lot, right? Since the congregating around the TV time, it's not as much of a thing.
I miss that. So as we're talking about AI, I think we're still thinking about how we see technology as an enabler for the human, and what we're starting to use now is AI. As consumers start to make inquiries, the AI assistant can start to respond in real time. So they go, "Oh, hi, Mohammed." So they'll know that hey, I'm inquiring about such and such. And we've actually heard audio recordings of agents saying, "Oh, sorry, that car's sold," and literally ending the call. And you're like,
yes.
So you've got a human that's got a budget and they're about to buy something and you've literally cut them off in their tracks dead. So now you have the conversational element of either your large language model, which is informing your agent to be able to say, "Hey, great, what was it you wanted to look? I'm just looking for that. What is it you liked about it?" And you could say, "Oh, I really love the performance or the economy or the blah, 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 what insert thing here." Yep. You can then say, "We've got 3 cars that match that description. This one's actually reserved. We can keep it. We can keep it for you. In the meantime, here are 3 others that fit that, and here's some price comparisons." So it allows the automation to be done without the human having to even leave what they were doing. Absolutely. So by the time the consumer walks in, you've done a lot of that lead nurture.
Absolutely.
So coming back to the AI topic, obviously you're working with retailers that are probably just learning how to improve search. So I think there's a long way to go in terms of knowledge. How ready are they, or how, I suppose, well informed are they to start to utilise the tools, and how much of the tools that you have at your disposal are people really using? Because I suppose the Google ecosystem is so vast and it goes so deep in terms of capabilities. How much of that are we really using as an industry at the moment?
It's an excellent question, Jackie. And yesterday I was at a conference of car dealers, and this is the topic that came up, right? AI. Specifically, I think we're at a stage now where everyone's heard of AI. The hype or the buzz is there, but especially when it comes to dealers, and I'd say especially like mid and smaller size dealers, the question's always coming that they're hearing so much about AI, but what can they actually take away and what can they actually do about it, right? And actually the question I was asked yesterday is similar as well, is that, is AI for everyone when it comes to car dealers? And I would say absolutely it is, really. From a very basic perspective, to, for example, using large language models to kind of understand, what's the trends going on at the moment when it comes to stock in the auto trade, like what kind of stock is good to buy, what kind isn't, using it to understand trends from a consumer side of things, and then all the way from that to, like you mentioned there, using AI when it comes to engagement with customers. There is a broad scope really for dealers to be using AI.
So where do they start? We see this a lot. There's so much tech that you can start to bring in, and we still see. We're talking at the moment about how do you develop in an agile way. So you just do. We talk about staircase, and so you do one thing, then you do the next thing. So if someone was to look back at Auto Trader 10 years ago, it would look very different. Yeah. So would Amazon. So would Google. Because the capability gradually increases, and you beta test something and then you roll it out. Yes. So I think it's the ability to not just do everything. We saw agency model coming in to try and replace what everybody else was already doing, and you ended up having a parallel set of processes that made it more difficult for retailers to do a simple job of putting a customer in a vehicle. Absolutely. So as we try and drive cost out of a business or make it more efficient, and this is where technology can really start to come in, where would you, and I'm sure this came up a lot yesterday, so just for reference, I think you were speaking at Car Dealer Live, weren't you? So you've had a lot of industry people coming along, and it's a great way going to events to learn about what's coming, what different suppliers are doing, and how can you improve what you're doing. So I suppose a couple of questions really. Where should, if the question from the retailers in the room was, great, like how do I start to use it then? What would be your advice on, great, we'll start here? Yeah, so where would they start?
There are two things really. One is on a personal level, learn. So one of the major things that Google's invested in, especially recent couple of years, is courses for AI, right? And these are courses for anyone from a personal level. If you're studying, for example, and you want to know how AI can help you, there are courses for that. From a business level as well, there are courses where you can learn what AI can actually do for you, right? And I think that's the really fundamental first part. Sometimes we might look for very specific, how as a car dealer of, this specific category of cars, how can AI help me there? But actually, the place to start is more on a broader level. Understand, what is actually AI on a conceptual level, and how businesses overall can use it. Right. Yeah. That's the number one place to start, I would say. And there are a lot of free kind of courses and whatnot online that Google has to offer for that. The second thing is really making sure that you start somewhere. Right. It's not the case, as you said, right, that you immediately roll out everything from day one. That's, sometimes with the hype of that, I think people feel like they have to. But again, like I said, whether it's, using it on a very personal level for, your own kind of questions, or to use AI as kind of your expert or one of your employees, that's the place to start. In your marketing, making sure that you use AI, whether it's for kind of creative asset generation or whether it's, for to power your campaigns, it's really important to start somewhere and not expect the world in one go. And finally, I would say, the importance of partners is really key, really, again, dealers are very busy people. We've got a lot of things going on at one time. So really making sure that, if you really want to deploy AI to its full extent, be willing to find partners who have that expertise and who you can collaborate with, who you can trust to do that.
Yeah, we sort of talk about, we're one of a number of suppliers, and we have a really robust partner ecosystem. So we wouldn't, for example, do the fintech piece because fintechs do that really well.
Exactly,
so
yes.
In terms of bringing in your finance deal, you just need to plug that bit into your front end. So you could have a widget that will do your finance calculators, or it's the ability to kind of have a shopping basket, or what does your My Account look like, and how do you start to track consumers' behaviour? And I think there's this expectation that from a consumer, and it would be great to kind of just explore with you if there is any best in class, who does it really well, which verticals do it really well, and how have they done it? Because I think automotive tries to compare itself with everybody else.
Yes, yeah.
But we're a luxury. In most cases, this is the second biggest purchase that you'll make.
Yeah,
so it's really important that we get it right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So from the experience yesterday, were there any key data? Because obviously you've done loads of research, and there's lots of data that you're wanting to share.
Yeah.
What are the big topics that the retailers are leaning on you for, or that any recent research that you're kind of taking out there that you're sharing with customers that's really landing with them?
Yeah, absolutely. The key annual research piece we have is into consumer insight, right? Because as you mentioned at the start, we have an amazing insight into what people are looking for, how people are looking for. So we have an annual research piece called Gear Shift, which looks into automotive trends, automotive consumer trends specifically. And the most recent report launched towards the end of last year. And there are three key things that really emerge from that. And what it is, I'd say, is two trends and one opportunity. Firstly, consumers are really researching for their cars more than ever. So year on year, we've seen 13% increase in searches for automotive in the UK. And fascinatingly, 25% increase year on year in views of auto content on YouTube as well, which is a really interesting one because, as I'll go on to later on, YouTube's such a key research tool, right, for automotive, and it's becoming increasingly so. Within that increase of searches, price is really top of mind for consumers. So two of the top things that have increased the most is price interest queries, and secondly, car finance queries, right? So many different ways to buy cars these days. That's really what's top of mind for consumers. The second thing is that consumers are appearing less loyal than previously as well. Right, and this was fascinating yesterday because there was a big discussion about OEMs and the Chinese OEMs and new non-traditional OEMs. But our data from last year suggested that 75% of our respondents bought a different car brand in their last purchase to the one previous to that. And whereas 3 years ago, only 3 years ago, not very long, the average number of brands being considered was 4, it's now 7. Right, so
wow, it's gone the other way.
Exactly right. Quite a substantial increase in people researching, and people are willing to consider more. And if you look at the longer term trends, right, it follows that say if you looked 20, 25 years ago, for example, South Korean brands like Kia and Hyundai, right, they weren't necessarily that particularly desirable as they are now. Whereas people are really looking up to their latest products. And finally, the opportunity there really is that there's an opportunity for brands to connect better with their customers. And there are a couple of things that feed into that, right? 62% of shoppers in our study stated that making the right purchase decision is harder now than it used to be, which is fascinating, right? Because you'd expect you've got so much information, you'd think that it'd be easier, right? But actually, the broader range of not just cars, but actually ways of buying, there's adding more complexity. But within that, right, we looked at who's confident when they're buying cars, and 64% of shoppers said that when they buy a car, they're very confident. But when we zoom into Gen Z, the same thing. How many of them are confident, very confident when buying a car? It's only 52%. So Gen Z actually, again surprisingly in my opinion, are less confident than the average when buying a car. And I think the opportunity there for brands is that you can kind of build a clear relationship with those customers. I always say, especially with Gen Z, it's not necessarily like it used to be that every kid dreams of having a Ferrari. Nowadays, there's so many other things in the world, right? That cars are not really, as necessarily as popular as they used to be with the kids. So when it comes to, specifically what you can do, social media content, YouTube content, that kind of aspirational and entertaining content, that's really an opportunity, I think, for brands, whether that's OEMs or dealers, to really connect more with those customers.
So just to recap then, so there's less loyalty with brands. Yep. They're looking at more things. They've got more choice than ever. More difficult to then differentiate. Mm-hmm. One thing I've noticed, actually, and I don't know what your view on this is, and we see this, so a lot of the new entrants are coming in with pure EV.
Yes.
And we've got the ZEV mandate. So I couldn't come to Car Dealer Live yesterday because I was at SMMT Electrified.
Right, yes, I see.
I could have had to choose. I was like, gotta go to one or the other. But it was really fascinating. So there was an event last year with the NFDA, and they put this thing on. It was like a fashion parade of all of the new entrants talking about what they were doing. And also, what was really apparent was the batteries are getting better, more reliable, less because some of the battery technology is actually quite, there's a bit of a risk with lithium batteries. So actually, you're getting much better batteries, which will last much longer. And the range anxiety is apparently going down. People are less bothered now about range.
Absolutely.
But the big opportunity, I think, and I don't know whether any of the Google research or as you look at the consumer behaviour looks at, are people finding it easier to understand total cost of ownership? Because that, for me, feels like a real gap in the retail space, that actually our own retailers don't have access easily to the ability to say, do you know it costs you £5 to charge this up? And I know that Erin at Auto Trader talks a lot about her experience regularly, but unless you're following her, you don't know.
Exactly.
So there's, we'd love to talk to people like Octopus to talk about how do they the way they talk about energy consumption is brilliant, because they're just thinking differently about cleaner and more renewable energy, which will drive the cost down. But the big topic yesterday was, when you're making all of these plans, supply chain came into it. You're planning these things years back, and you forget that politics changes and it all goes to hell.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's slightly unpredictable. Yeah. But just on the point of total cost of ownership, are consumers looking for that as a metric, as a how do you compare your battery electric vehicle, so a BEV with an ICE or a hybrid? Because the data is there. It's just locked in massive PDFs of stuff that you can't decipher unless you've got a tool that brings it out, which there are obviously tools available.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good point, because firstly, as you mentioned, right, the last couple of years, probably the top queries have been around, range and, how far can I go? Is it enough for my commute? With the developments in battery technology, we've seen those queries still increase, but the growth has slowed down, right? And instead of that, more queries have come specifically about, as you mentioned, kind of cost of ownership, and also the specifics of EVs sometimes. So battery health, right? What does that mean? And that's been triggered by, the last year or so, how much more affordable used EVs have become. Consumers want to know, like, is it too good to be true that I can get, a Tesla for 20 grand or something? That's what we've been seeing appearing a lot. And the fascinating thing, right, is that there's so many different layers to this, because you've got cost of ownership consists of, how much does it actually cost to get the car? And I'd say get instead of buy, because how many are leasing now, how many are getting salary sacrifice? So we've seen increases in queries, for example, salary sacrifice, because there's been a lot of, in the popular culture, I think people are becoming more conscious of it. And more employers are offering it. And on social media, you've got people saying, oh, if you get this car on salary sacrifice, it can be, half the price over 3 years compared to buying it.
Yeah.
And actually, because consumers have found these more affordable ways into EVs specifically, we have seen more queries about, pricing that up. Whereas before, it was really, EVs were known to be, more luxury or expensive. So only people who really felt they could get it were searching. Whereas now, EVs are pretty much accessible to everyone when it comes to the car purchaser.
Yeah, you get an EV in every price bracket now, don't you? Particularly with new entrants coming in. And like you say, Kia, Hyundai, the South Korean brands a few years ago were, people were maybe skeptical, and now like the EV6 is just a sexy car.
Yeah,
people want it.
Exactly. Yeah. And like the Dacia Spring at the moment, for example, right? 16 grand for an EV is quite a fascinating proposition.
It's nuts, isn't it? My son learnt to drive in a Dacia.
Oh, right.
And like, he loves it, really good. And then he had to get into an iGo when he passed his test.
Yes, yeah.
So it's the obligatory shed that all three of my kids have driven. So he's now in that.
Passage.
It's the rite of passage, because he's going to crash it probably. But I'm like, you don't do it an expensive one. But he didn't know how to use a handbrake, because the Dacia has not
the physical handbrake. Crikey,
so I used to let him drive to school. So part of their learning to drive thing was, if you get up early enough, you can drive yourself to the station.
That's
I'll drive it back.
Yeah, that's good.
So I've got my very lovely, big car, and I'd be driving back in the iGo, like, brilliant car actually, but I know how to use a handbrake, because I learned doing it. It's really funny. Yeah. So one of the other things that you mentioned in the research that I think is really worth drilling into, and that's this point. So you've got sort of brand promiscuity. So we know that we've got Safest coming on in a couple of weeks, and they do lots of that kind of tracking of consumer behaviour across multiple sites, specifically on the OEM brand sites. So how people are kind of opening millions of tabs before they start to then narrow down their decision making. But the point of loyalty, so we obviously see, we've made the connection that if you look after a customer when they have the product, they're more likely to buy it again from you if you get them at the right time. So it's how can you start to make sure that you run those kinds of campaigns to reduce the cost of advertising spend. Obviously, not to take too much out of the Google purse, but it's like, but actually, it is expensive to advertise. And obviously, my background is advertising, so you've got to get your customers when they're looking. But if you can take them out of market before they start, it's a really good way to drive that. Do you think people have really kind of cottoned onto that? Do you see people searching for service pricing or within the Google spec? I don't know whether I didn't pre-prep you about this, but I don't know whether there's anything that leapt out from the research that there are opportunities to increase loyalty through after sales, or whether you think that's...
Yeah, it's a very fascinating one, because the increasing trend of people not buying their cars outright, it's an interesting opportunity, because whereas before a lot of the convincing had to go into from the brand side, had to go into, it's a good time to buy a new car, you should get a new car now. There's a natural period of people owning a car for 3 to 4, 5 years now, because they have a finance agreement, they have a lease.
Yeah.
And I think what we have seen is, there are kind of flows of, within those 3 years. For example, it was I think it was a Porsche Taycan, right? 3 years after it was launched, all the prices went down, because that was when the people who got it at the start were starting to get rid of their leases. So we see this seasonality within it. When it comes to things like after sales, it's an interesting one. One of the, anecdotally from speaking with quite a few people and dealers, one of the things I have heard is that because cars are increasingly on lease or finance, there's usually after sales agreements within that, and people are following those. But people who are buying, there's an increasing awareness now that residual value is really important, that a full service history is really valuable, I think, more now. And for those people who've bought, I think specifically there is an opportunity, firstly through having a good service, and secondly through having those good offers, again, like you say, at the right time, 2-3 years at least into someone's purchase. And one of the final things I think anecdotally that I've noticed is that I'm one of these people who I just go into car dealerships for fun, right? Like, maybe it's a car dealer's nightmare that it's necessarily an unqualified lead coming in. But one of the things I've noticed is that I think engaging with interest is so important from a car dealer's perspective. And like you mentioned earlier, if someone's interested in one car but that's not there, understanding what's behind their motivations is really important. And I think there's an opportunity for dealers to really engage more in the motivations behind people purchases. At the moment, when we look at the research, the trend is that people are feeling that car dealers kind of car brands or dealers care slightly less about customers now than they did before. It's more of a numbers game than perhaps the emotional game that there was previously. So I think that's really a key opportunity for brands to set themselves apart. And at the end of the day, people, we always say in our teams at Google, people buy from people, right? It's the old saying. So if you can create that engagement and offer a competitive deal, it doesn't have to be the best deal for the customer to buy from you.
You're right. I think that's a really good point. So you'll buy from the people. That was the first thing I learned in sales. People buy from people that they like and they trust.
Yes.
So I think the trust element, coming back to that kind of key moment, the Google moments are based on human moments. And we did a piece of research years ago. I worked for an e-commerce agency, and we built sort of early iterations of those car, buying sites for OEMs. Obviously, we now have loads of them, across our ecosystem, but it's understanding what are the key moments that matter in the car buying, and trust was a really big one. And that really drove things like the reviews. And why do you trust your Google review?
Yes.
And you trust it because millions of people have taken the trouble to say something. And if it's a good review, you believe it. And that goes back to our tribal nature, that if you wander away from the crowd, you could get eaten. So, or you could get lost.
Yeah.
So I think the tribal nature of us as human beings, we're hardwired to follow a crowd. So I think understanding some of those key moments as well, and how you engineer or how you build trust, because you want someone. I would pay more, and we actually found this in research that we did a couple of years ago. People are prepared to pay more for a good experience. Yeah. If you're weighing up that thing with this thing, and you've built a relationship. So I've come and spoken to you in the dealership, and you've taken time to get to know me. And I had this experience actually. There was during COVID, they didn't accompany you on test drives.
Right. Yes.
And it was so much better.
Yes, absolutely.
I was like, I went in with my son. There was like, take your co-driver. I was like, okay. And it felt like fun. So I went off. I think I test drove 3.
Right.
And then I didn't buy that month because we were still working out whether we wanted the smaller one. It was just, we were testing it. I've got 3 grown-up children now, but there are times when I had 3 smaller portable children, and I had to fit them in. They were portable, they were massive, but I would go along with my life like 3 car seats and a double buggy, and if I couldn't fit it in the car, I wouldn't even drive it off the forecourt. So I'm like, I've got to just see if I fit. So I think you just try it on. So I think how we shop is we're trying it on.
Yeah.
And there's some gimmicky things where you can literally put the car on your drive, which I'm not sure how many people actually do that. I think it's great if you can put a sofa in your space, the IKEA thing.
Yeah, that's very good.
Which where it came from. But you literally have to physically just try it on. And it's a different experience. You want to feel good about it when you get in it. And I think that's also to do with the human element.
Absolutely. And like you say, one of the ways for that is, and the fundamental is making sure you have, good presence on Google, which is where often people search first from a review perspective. But there's so much more opportunities as well. When we look at Netflix at the moment, I was looking last night what to watch. There are documentaries on Netflix about what it's like working at Lidl, for example, right? Like there's a whole 50-minute, it's quite a popular documentary, right? People at the moment are more interested in the mundane than ever when we look at what people are interested in learning about. And from a dealer perspective, there are a lot of dealers online on YouTube who've taken advantage of that, and they've shown a peek behind the curtain through their content about what it's like being a dealer, how do they source their stock and whatnot. An example of this, James Baggett from Car Dealer Magazine, he started his own dealership. He's doing YouTube videos on how that's going. It's actually very interesting to show the application of AI for dealers. And then there's another dealer, I think High Peak Autos. I think he's got quite a number of subscribers on YouTube, again, showing what it's like to be a seller. And that, I think, is an opportunity for every dealer, because it doesn't have to be pristine, manicured content. You don't have to get a film crew in. Just put your phone up and record something and let your character show. And that's an opportunity for every dealer, small or big, to build that following and potentially build that customer base from that as well, because that ultimately brings that trust that you mentioned.
Very much. There was an interesting thing. We just talking about humans and demographics and how you mentioned Gen Z, Gen Z, whatever. But it's just, so actually, I forget which generation is which age bracket. But you go,
so do I.
I'm like, which one's that then? I don't know. I can't remember. Which are they? Baby boomers? When does baby boomers stop? And Gen X,
exactly.
Gen Z. Which one
when
is
do
it?
the letters stop?
I don't know. Which generation are we now? What am I? I don't know. So, but one of the things that that there was a recent Ipsos, they were sharing this at the Canadian Automotive Dealer Association study, and they talked about demographics and who's most likely to buy a car, and it isn't the younger generation. I think we've kind of gone, we've got to look after the millennials or the Gen Zers or the whatever. It's actually people old. I'm not going to point at you because I think I'm older than you. It's people like me that are actually buying. So when you think about the video content we're putting out there, and I have spent a long time in automotive, there are not that many women, particularly in the retail space. And we see more of them now, and there's a lot of activism around supporting women in the workplace, but also women in automotive, which is great. But I wonder, how do we get content that's accessible for shoppers that look like me? Absolutely. So I feel like I'm buying from someone that's going to give me good advice. Absolutely. So it's that maybe we should have a YouTube channel. I don't know. Watch here.
Suggestion.
Good. But it's but actually, I know that we've got more female journalists coming, and Erin supports that. I mentioned her before, but she's editor-in-chief at Auto Trader and really advocates. Vicky Butler Henderson is another great. She's been an automotive journalist for years. So and I started my career with VBH back on Max Power days.
Right, wow.
So it's but it's we have women that kind of have pockets, but it'd be great to see how we can represent each of those little groups with the right content at the right time. Absolutely. So I wonder whether actually, Mohammad, whether AI will maybe spin up someone that looks and sounds like you, because you probably could do that, couldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to AI, there's a lot of opportunity there, as you mentioned, for personalization, right? I think it's a really important tool that will become increasingly important as it becomes more accessible to everyone. And I think we should watch that as well and keep leveraging that. But I do also think what you mentioned about the importance of influencing personalities, right? I think representation's incredibly important. Having people who represent the diversity of your customer base, I think, can never be underestimated. I think there's always room for continuing work on that, right? So it's been great progress, but it's also something really important to consider. And when we look from, we have really quite clear kind of recommendations, best practices on what effective creative looks like for marketing. And one of the key ones there, one of the key areas there is really represent your customer on the screen. So yeah, I think absolutely there's a lot of scope for that with AI, but also with the kind of personalities in real life.
Brilliant. So all the research that you've obviously taken that out to Car Dealer Live and other events. Where can this audience that's listening to the podcast, where could they access that, or how can they get more involved with the work that you're doing in automotive?
Absolutely. Number one recommendation, I'd say, add me on LinkedIn.
We'll tag you, actually. There. We'll tag you, definitely, and then they can follow you.
Little plug there. Content like, some of the gear shift studies we've been doing, I'll be posting and sharing them.
Great.
And also, when it comes to, opportunities for how dealers and brands in the auto space can partner with Google, it's something that we'll be focusing a lot on.
Excellent. So the gear shift thing is great because I follow things like Think with Google, and I think some of the creative is fantastic.
Yes, yeah.
So, and I think I'm always keen to learn. My learning journey is ongoing. I think as digital and anything to do with technology accelerates, we're going to continually learn. So hopefully this is going to be the space where you can find more information. But the gear shift space, is there a gear shift space on LinkedIn, or can we just find that through Google?
Through Google.
Right, okay.
Google, yeah.
So we'll tag that in the podcast so people can find it as well. And then obviously we'll have a good look at it. But what's next? Are there any sort of major studies or big projects that you've got coming down the pipes?
Yeah, great question. So a real priority for us at the moment is how we can make vehicle ads more relevant and accessible to dealers across the UK and actually beyond as well. So with vehicle ads, which is that tool that gets you to the top of Google search with your inventory, a couple of exciting developments. For example, now, as well as the cash price, you can actually put your monthly installments, a representative example, into there.
Yeah.
Opens it up to finance, also to leasing. So we've had some great work with some of our partners like leasing.com, for example, helping them advertise their inventory there. And continuing the success cases there. We've had some really exciting case studies from, the likes of Motors, Citroën, Evans Halshaw as a dealer group. And really, we're focusing on continuing how we can expand that and get more dealers onto it.
I can't wait to see that. That's really good. Thank you so much, Mohammad. It's been really fantastic having you in the studio.
Thanks for having me.
I think we're going to have to get you back a few more times as the research develops.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Jackie.
Awesome. Thank you.